Good. Does everybody use the restroom that needs to? Okay, great. The waters are yours. Help yourselves to the water. Okay. And we're going to start in just 1 minute. All right. Yay. Good. Okay. So, Stephanie, all set? Okay, good. And let me just make sure it's all happening. Yay, it is. Okay. So, we'll begin in just one moment. Whoop. Goes here. All right, Stephanie, you all set? Is everybody bathroomed? Okay, good to hear it. And yay! Welcome to National Trust. Yay! Woo! And welcome to our audience on Facebook Live and Zoom. So, as you know, with all these shows, you have to contribute by making sounds, right? Yes, you have to. Right, good. What was that sound? Great, I love it. Lions are great. Good for you. So you have to help us out at home too. All right. Everybody makes sounds. Everybody contributes. Okay. So let's have some practice sound. Right. That's right. Yeah. Oh, it was Homer Simpson. Oh, Marge. Oh, yes. Yes. I always think of you as Marge Simpson. Yeah. So, okay. So we're going to practice some sounds. Okay. Okay. So give me an explosion. Good. Very good. Very good. And people at home? Come on, people at home. Oh, I heard you. That was great. Good people at home. I love it. Give me some machine guns. Good, good, good. People at home. You know, people at home are doing very well. I can hear you. That helps the show a lot. And one last thing, baseball on a bat, like, right? So we need to make the sound. Here we go. Good, good, great. Yay, lovely, great audience. Okay, so we're all set to go. So here we go with National Trust. Da 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 da. This is the pre-show music. Da 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 da. Da 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 I was playing soccer. Yes. I was in sixth grade playing soccer. I was a horrible soccer player. The worst on my team. Terrible. You know what position they gave to me? Yeah. Fullback, right? The most useless position, right? Fullback is just defense. It doesn't do anything important. It just does defense. You're just way back there in front of the goal. And the goalie's important. He's going to stop the ball. So I did nothing. I was just like sitting up there, dreaming, daydreaming. You know, here's the thing, the halfbacks take care of everything the fullback has to do, right? The halfbacks fall back and cover the fullbacks. It's ridiculous. So me and the other lame-o on the team, except I was the biggest lame-o, we were in the fullback position, right? And I was lollygagging back there one day, bored out of my mind because the halfbacks would cover everything. And then all of a sudden, I realized that the forwards of the other team had the ball and they're coming towards me. They passed my forwards, they passed the halfbacks, and they were all coming towards me. It was like a battleship coming towards me, dribbling, and they were on my side of the field. And I was the only thing between them and the goal. It was horrifying. So I need somebody to be the opposing team. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah. Okay, good. So I want you to come at me. Stay there. Start there. Come at me slowly, dribbling the ball, and I'm going to stop you. I'm going to stop you. I'm going to stop you. Stop, stop. Ah! Yay! Thank you, opposing team. Woo! He got a goal. They got past me. It's my fault. They got past me. I hadn't stopped them. Okay, the coach was on top of a 10-foot ladder, this huge ladder over on the side of the field. His name was Mr. Holland. Yeah, that was his name. And he had a son on the team whose name was Dutch. Dutch Holland. Can you believe it? Stupid. It was so stupid. He was on top of this huge ladder because he wanted to get telephoto pictures of all of us. And when he saw me screw up that goal, he said, "Get over here! Come here! Come here!" I walked up to him and I said, "Yes, Coach Holland." I want you to go out there and I want you to make a goal. I'm a fullback. I can't make a goal. Make a goal. Yes, Mr. Holland. Okay, Mr. Holland. Sure, Mr. Holland. I was like, how can a fullback make a goal? It's impossible. It doesn't make any sense. So I went back to my fullback position. And so my whole team was at the other end of the field near their goal. And all of a sudden, their team kicked the ball out of bounds. So we had a penalty throw right near their goal. So we all run to the front, right? And we're all standing around their goal, right? Getting ready to. Now, here's the idea. It's so stupid. They're going to throw the ball in, and one of us is going to kick it in. It's never going to happen. I realize that what's going to happen is their team is going to get the ball, and we're all going to have to rush back to my goal. So we have to get back there first. So I'm like looking at my goal because I know I'm going to have to rush. The minute the ball's in play, I'm going to have to rush back. I'm going to have to rush back. So my team member runs and throws the ball into the field. It's headed right towards me. Boom! It hits me in the chest. Oh my God, how did I do that? I blocked it with my chest. I must have been like channeling Pele, who I'd seen on TV or something. Yeah, I'm Pele. The ball falls at my feet, and I, boom, kick it in the goal. Yeah! Give me a cheer. Yay! It was my greatest moment in sports ever. I am so happy with this audience. You know, I only thought one person was coming tonight, and two showed up. That means I'm oversold. Yay! Give me another cheer. Yay! Go audience. Go audience. I'd made my goal. And Mr. Holland, he was ecstatic. He was just joking. He didn't think I'd ever do it. He was taking pictures of me. Yeah! Yeah! This guy should have been like leading an invasion of a small country. He had so much energy. Yeah, John! My happiest moment in soccer. I'd done it. I'd succeeded. All I needed was a bunch of obnoxious direction. That's all it took. So I left the field, feeling pretty good about myself. I got home. I took off my jersey. It was full of sweat. Well, not really, but I felt like it should be. Victor's sweat. So I thought, oh, I must be sweaty, even if I'm not. I hadn't started sweating yet, even. I took off my shirt and I threw it down. And I lay on my bed, feeling really good about myself and my big victory. But you know, I couldn't feel happy because I'd never felt happy in that house. That house had never been a happy place for me. I don't know what it was. It was a beautiful house. It was absolutely stunning. It was my mommy's dream house. Yeah, my daddy built for her the ideal house. She wanted a colonial mansion. It was huge. It had these white clapboarding, 3 stories tall, with these columns soaring up into the air, fluted columns, and an attic story, a big porch, and storm shutters, you know, for storms. But, you know, where we lived in Marin, there was never storms. It was ridiculous. And the storm shutters were just nailed to the wall. They didn't do anything. You couldn't close them in a storm. But it was so charming. And when we were little kids, it was beautifully decorated, and we could do anything we wanted. We ran all over the house. We had fun in that house. I loved everybody in my family. They're all bright and charming, clever, full of energy, witty. The thing is that they were all very different. And as we got older, the differences began to show more and more, which didn't mean that they were bad people, but we kind of grew apart and there were tensions and we kind of lost that family aspect. And then my mother got incredibly neurotic and she started cleaning up the house all the time. It was no longer a house with like books open around it or, you know, like a jacket thrown on a chair. It was always neat, neat, neat. And we couldn't go into half the rooms. We couldn't go in the living room or the dining room. And it stopped feeling like a home. It just felt like, I don't know, a place where I lived. And I just wasn't happy there. I felt lonely. I felt completely lonely in that house. Not a loved house because it lacked a relationship. Great people, but no relationship. Years later, it was sold. When we all went off to college, my parents sold it. And they had the people come in and stage it. You know how they stage houses for sale? And the stagers came in and they made it like a house again, right? They just took like a throw and like threw it on the couch. Or they like opened up a book. And suddenly it had love in it. It looked like people lived in it, even though it was like completely theatrical. It was staged. And it was stunning. And the magic came back to it at the moment that we were getting rid of it. It was so weird that way to see it suddenly filled with love because the stagers actually loved it. They wanted it to succeed. I'd never been happy in it. So when it got sold, I didn't feel any pang of regret. I was never going to miss this house. Where did it go? Where did this love in my family go? And my father, he never coached the team like Mr. Holland, like Dutch's father. He never coached the team. So I never felt like he was engaged. And my mommy never came and saw me play. So I never felt like they were engaged. And so I just felt like I was on my own all the time, trying to succeed without any motivation. I wouldn't be able to impress anybody except Mr. Holland on top of his huge ladder. And what that mean? I don't know. I love the people in that house, but not the house, not the family, not the relationship. It reminds me of the greatest house ever, Castle Howard in England. Yes, in Yorkshire. This magnificent mansion. Oh my God, built at the beginning of the 18th century by John Vanbrugh. Yes, indeed, with a tricorn hat. He had a This is like a failed prop. This was supposed to be a tricorn hat, but they didn't. Okay, so you have to imagine it's junk. Okay, so John Vanbrugh built this beautiful house at the beginning of the 18th century. Spectacular, and of course, it's famous from the greatest TV series of all time and the greatest movie of all time. Can you guess, studio audience? Brideshead Revisited and Barry Lyndon. Oh, they're both so great. And of course, they're famous for the great music, right? All that great music in Brideshead Revisited. So I need one of you to be the string section, okay? So I have to do, you don't have to play the guitar, don't worry. All you have to do, I don't play the guitar. I've never touched this instrument before this show. You just have to go like this. Okay, good. All right, take it. Soccer player. Okay. So, all right, you all set? Okay. So you're gonna be the string section. I'm gonna be the brass. Okay, and we're gonna do the theme music to Brideshead Revisited. Okay, go. Louder. Da 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 da. I'm a French horn. Da 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 da. Actually, English horn. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Oh, I love that music. Lovely. Good. Give them a round of applause. Yay! And then the music for Stanley Kubrick's Barry Lyndon is even better. It's Handel's Sarabande. Oh, that great dance music, the Sarabande. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. That's not the dance, I just made that up. I love that music. It sends shivers up my spine. And both those entertainments are about families, families in big houses. The houses are so important in those movies. Stanley Kubrick, in shooting Barry Lyndon, keeps changing the mood of the house to match the family. Sometimes the house is in darkness when the family's sad. Sometimes it's in mist when things are mysterious. Sometimes it's bright sunshine when the little boy is born. And then when he dies, it's also a bright sunny day. It's so ironic. It's wonderful. But it's really about the families. Tolstoy said, all happy families are alike. But all unhappy families are unhappy in their own unique way. And it's certainly borne out by these entertainments. These families are uniquely unhappy. And if it's true in fiction, it's true in life also. Because the real Castle Howard, owned by Lord Howard, was in the family possession for 300 years. In the 1990s, Lord Howard didn't know what to do with it because he had a ne'er-do-well son, a son who was not a good guy. He even said that in the newspaper. Every family has a black sheep, and I don't know what to do with mine. So he wasn't going to leave him that house. Nope. So he created a foundation to protect the house, to keep it in existence, because he didn't trust his son not to sell it and it get torn down. You see, my house, when it got sold, my parents were so happy to be rid of it. They didn't even realize how excited they were. They totally relaxed when they sold my house. It was gone. And suddenly they became a couple. They had this great relationship after they got rid of that house. They really linked, right? Because they didn't have this burden anymore. They didn't have this thing they had to worry about. So for them, losing the house was great. It was fantastic. And American houses are different. They're not like European houses, which everybody tries everything they can do to save it, to save it, to save it. In an American house, when it's sold, the new owner comes in and tears it down. Why? Because he wants his own dream house, right? Right? So my mom had the big, beautiful white colonial house. And the guy bought it. All I wanted was the property. That's all he wanted. He tore it down and he built his own dream house, which was a 4-story Bavarian hunting lodge. Can you imagine in the middle of the redwoods? But that's what he wanted. That's American houses. They keep changing so everybody can have their dream. You know, my aunt had the most amazing house. She was my godmother. She lived at the end of the lane in my town. And it was incredible. It was built in the 19th century. It was huge. It was like 4 stories tall. And one afternoon, I was sneaking around. I wasn't supposed to be. My mother was playing bridge. She was one of those bridge ladies, my mother. So they were consumed by bridge, right? And bridge just like took their brains. So I snuck upstairs. And on the 4th floor, guess what I found? I found a fully appointed theater, a real live theater on the 4th floor. Because in country estates, they used to put on amateur theatricals, right? The family would put on plays. It was great, but nobody put plays on up there. They just stored things. There were great rooms in that house. There was a living room, majestic, like a ballroom. There was a big dining room, a huge kitchen. And when you walked out in the front of it, there was this huge porch. And that's where on Easter Sunday, all the adults drank mint juleps and Bloody Marys, talked about the stock market. At the end of the porch was a big driveway. When you pulled up on Christmas Eve with all your presents, you got out of the car and an attendant drove it and parked it. I couldn't believe it. And then there was a gigantic lawn, which was actually a former polo field where ponies used to play polo. It was incredible. And at the end of it, a gigantic Olympic sized swimming pool. And beside that, a gymnasium with a basketball court in it where they used to box in the 19th century. And beside that, a duck pond full of ducks surrounded by marble balustrades with like ancient statues, like reproductions of ancient statuary on it. And like Pootie, you know, Pootie, those little babies with their little white butts hanging out all over the place. Yes, it was like a dream house. So I was sent there during baseball season because if I was a bad soccer player, I was even worse at baseball. I was terrible. But Eric, my godmother's son, was a brilliant athlete. And he was going to show me how to play baseball. You see, my father used to play with me, but then he got busy and he just wasn't around. So somebody had to train me in baseball. And Eric was going to do it. Now, Eric was amazing. Eric was like this blonde god. He was like 6'5", and he had this beautiful blonde hair and this big, thick blonde beard. At like 13, he had this beautiful beard, right? He had this big, solid chest and this microscopic waist and these really firm buttocks. I mean, I didn't lust for him because he was a god, and you don't lust for gods. But he was an Elysian Promethean god. I loved him. I just wanted to worship him. And he was going to teach me how to play baseball. So he got at one end of this huge lawn where the cars are parked, and I got the other down by the pool, right? So now I'm Eric. I'm going to hit some baseballs to you guys, right? And you're going to have to give me the, right? When I hit, you're also going to have to catch them, all right? All right, so get your mitts ready. Get your mitts ready. Come on. Yeah, work your mitt. Work your mitt. Yeah, okay. So, all right. So here we go. And Eric had this great deep voice. All right, John, you all set? I mean, he was like barely older than me, but he was, okay, here we go. And catch it, catch it, catch it, catch it. Oh, okay, here we go. Here's another one. Yeah, catch it. Come on, John, catch it, catch it. I want to see you both catch it. I'm going to hit two. I want to see you both get it. All right, here we go. And boom, boom. Yeah! Oh, thank you. Eric was amazing. I loved playing baseball with him. And he was such a gentleman. I mean, I could tell that he was sort of like making it easy for me. And he just tapped the ball and it flew across the lawn. He was like Barry Bonds, but without the steroids, you know? He just made it happen. Just and it flew. I love that family. My godmother and her family. They were incredible. It was like the perfect family, the perfect house. I thought, wow, this must be it. This is the family that's happy, happy with each other. They have a handsome son, a really proud, impressive father. All the men have these really deep voices. They're really polite, and they give you firm handshakes. And they're really supportive and interested in what you were doing. And they had a beautiful daughter named Tori. Tori was magical. She had this beautiful black hair, and it was so black, it was almost blue, right? And she was so polite. She was like her mother. Hi, John. Merry Christmas. How are you? You have a nice Christmas? I'm glad. Thanks for coming to our Christmas Eve party. I kind of had a crush on her, you know, because she was such a hostess like her mother. But there was something weird about her because she kind of lived in her brother's shadows. She, I don't know, she just didn't really fit in. The family was all so perfect, but she was very quiet. I couldn't quite figure out what was going on with her sometimes. She seemed kind of sad. But Eric was perfect. He was like the quarterback of the high school football team. Boom. He was the pitcher on the baseball team. Boom. He was going places, and he was smart. We all knew that he'd get a scholarship to like Stanford or Yale, that he'd really clean up. And then one day, he was standing on that beautiful driveway, right in front of the little sports car that his parents bought for him, tossing a football. Boom, 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 with his sports car behind him. Boom, boom, boom. And Tori was backing out of her parking space in the same driveway. And all of a sudden, accidentally, she backed her car to Eric's car, except that Eric was between the two of them. She crushed his legs between the two cars. Well, he wasn't mutilated. He just had two broken legs. And that was basically the end of his sports career. He wasn't going to play sports again because he couldn't run. And he recovered, but it was so much for athletics. And I couldn't figure it out. And the weird thing was, is my mommy told me all about this because she knew that I'd see Eric with two broken legs, which was unusual, right? And so she felt like she had to explain to me what happened. And she said, well, Tori accidentally backed her car into Eric's and he was in between them. But she had that little tiny pause before she said accidentally. I thought, oh, maybe it wasn't an accident. Eric was unfazed, you know, he had two casts on each foot, right? Each leg, right? And he was always walking around with his crutches with these two massive casts, right? But he lost none of his nerve, right? He was like the same old Eric. All right, John, go out. Here we go. And oh, good catch, John. And oh, he was always Eric. I heard other things too that surprised me. My godmother had the best maid ever. I'd never even seen a maid before. I didn't know what a maid was, but she was the maid and the cook of the house. Her name was Hobita. She was from the Philippines. And she was terrific. Everybody loved her. And she'd come up to you on Christmas Eve and she'd ask how you're doing. And she'd tweak your cheek and she'd say, I've known you since you were 2 years old. Everybody loved Jovita. Then one day, she was fired. My godmother fired her after 20 years. I couldn't figure out what happened. My mommy said, well, she didn't get along with Tori. Tori? Nice? Tori? No. So they fired her. Well, Jovita went across the street to the next mansion and got a job there. They've been asking her to come and work for them for years. So they were thrilled when she got fired. She just moved across the street. But there was obviously a dark side to this family that I never realized. Then I found out that my aunt was always fighting with neighbors about lights and noise. The sad thing was is that when the kids grew up, none of them wanted the house. They weren't interested. The parents, it was too much for them to take care of. So they got rid of it. The property was divided up. The estate was destroyed. It was incredible. See, now this can't really happen in England because they're so interested in their patrimony. So they create things like the National Trust. The National Trust is created to save British houses, turns them into museums, right? And the amazing thing is that people can continue to live in the house, right? So you can be living in your house and a museum party will pass you and look at you, and you just become a display in the museum. It's kind of incredible. And this is the way they save the houses, which sort of amazed me. That's what happens at Brideshead Revisited. The house in the city, Marchmain House, gets lost and they replace it with apartments. I'm convinced that they're going to lose the big house. And that's what happens in Barry Lyndon. Barry Lyndon can't hang on to the house. It's all about the loss of house. And I think it's because there was never true happiness in it. I met the guy who wrote the book about the National Trust. It's called The Fate of the English Country House. It's an amazing book. His name is David Littlejohn, and I knew him because he was a professor at UC Berkeley, where I went to school. And also, he was a journalist for the Wall Street Journal. And he came and saw a play that I wrote and directed, and he reviewed it, and then he wanted to interview me. So I set up a time to meet him. And I was waiting for him on Post Street downtown, and he came up Post Street in a wheelchair, uphill. And that was David. He was determined. Nothing was ever going to stop David. He had that determination about him. He never talked about being in a wheelchair. And he wrote books. He traveled all over the world. He did research. It was amazing. And when you talk to him, he was always kind of like totally frustrated about being in that chair. He was always like going, it was like he was trying to will himself out of it. A lot of times he walked with crutches. And when he did, he was so determined. He'd go up the steepest hills of San Francisco. He always amazed me. I love David. And when it was time for me to write my dissertation, when you write your dissertation, you have to have an orals committee. You have to defend your orals. Orally, you have to defend your dissertation subject. So I put David on my committee because he was like super smart. I knew people would be impressed that he was on my committee. The thing is, I also knew that he knew nothing about my subject. My subject was camp. You know what camp? Like gay campy stuff? Yeah, when you say something's campy, right? That's what I wrote my dissertation on. I said that camp is political because it disrupts things. It makes you think differently about stuff. So I was going to write my dissertation about that. I put David on my committee because I knew he knew nothing about it. He doesn't care about camp, right? He was like this guy who was married, had kids, So he was on my committee. He said, okay, the Monday before my orals, and this is where you sit down and talk to your professors, 4 of them, for 4 hours to defend your subject. They get to question you. It's like being in court. He said, let's get together and talk about your orals, your oral committee. I said, okay, great. So he took me to a super nice restaurant, and we sat down, and we talked for 2 hours about my subject. And it turned out he had been researching my subject and knew almost as much as I did. He was incredible. And he grilled me. He said, so tell me about camp. Okay? Tell me about political theater. Tell me about Charles Ludlam, the great camp artist. Tell me about Bertolt Brecht, the great political artist. Tell me about the Berliner Ensemble, the greatest political theater of all time. And he grilled me for 2 hours. I was so impressed. And I realized what he was doing. He was getting me ready for my orals. He was telling me what questions he would ask me during my orals. It was like we were preparing for a court case. You know how attorneys do that with their clients? Yeah, it was great. I thought, what a great guy. And then afterwards, he took me to see an opera, Eugene Onegin, this great Russian opera by Tchaikovsky. So give me some Russian opera, you guys. Just sing Russian. Go ahead. Oh my God, we got some Russians here. You guys are great. That was like a Russian Carmen. I love it. It was such a nice evening. And on Monday morning, I was going into my orals with an ace in the hole, David. He'd set it all up. Now, they tell you when you go in to meet your professors, spend 4 hours with them, take a bunch of food. That way you'll win them over, right? Win them over with food. So I took bagels and lox and cream cheese, orange juice, coffee, and I spread it all out. And my committee, 4 professors, came in the room and they didn't touch my food. They didn't even look at it. It's like, what? Oh my God, I'm not going to be able to bribe them with food. I'm going to have to do this. Because if they eat my food and I fail, then they're going to feel guilty, so they're not going to touch it. Oh God. So they start asking me questions. And I was doing pretty good. I was answering all of them. But David hadn't said anything. He hadn't said a word. I thought, this is my ace in the hole. He's supposed to be the guy who's supposed to help me. I was like, what is he doing? Why isn't he asking me questions? And people were asking me. I was doing okay. I was answering the questions of the other 3 professors. I was doing fine. I was doing fine. And then David started asking me questions. He didn't ask me one question that he had asked over dinner. It was all new questions. In other words, all that stuff that he had prepped me was nonsense. I wasn't prepared. It was a trick. And he was grilling me with all new questions. I was like sweating. I was like, what has he done? This guy is such a trickster. But I answered the questions. I just kept answering. If they weren't satisfied with my answer, I would expand and explain what I was trying to say. And all of a sudden, I saw David reach over, grab a bagel, cut it in two, and put cream cheese on it. And that's when I knew I was winning them over. Next thing I knew, they were all eating bagels. Everybody was laughing. I'd passed my orals. I knew because they ate the food. Yay! It's like kicking that ball into the goal, right? Oh, and David, I thought, what a trickster. He seduced me with dinner and the opera. And I thought, oh, I've got this friend of mine side. He turned into like a hostile witness. Suddenly I was in court being grilled by this guy. I was like, but I have to say, I was really impressed. I thought that was a very clever thing to do. I don't know why. It just sort of showed kind of a dark side to him that I didn't expect. And I kind of like that. It was a side of him that I would get to know better as time went by, a side that eventually kind of scared me. Anyway, his book on the National Trust is an amazing book. It's fascinating. Now, the National Trust was set up in 1895 in England to preserve houses. So a lot of houses were being sold, beautiful old houses like Castle Howard. They're being sold and torn down. So England was losing these great houses. So in 1895, they set the National Trust to use government money to buy houses from people who had to sell. Okay? And usually the reason they had to sell was big death dues, right? People would owe so much money in death taxes when somebody died, like 80% of the value of the house, that they couldn't afford to keep it. So the National Trust was set up to save these houses. 1895 was set by 3 people. One of them was a lesbian, so that's nice, LGBT, right? And then in 1937, a man named Lord Lothian took over the National Trust. Now, he was fascinating because he came up with an innovation that would allow more houses to be bought. It made this deal sweeter. He had a rich and interesting history. He had been a part of the British government as the Secretary for India. Now, what that meant was he was the man who arranged in the 30s for the Indians to be free, to break off from the British Empire. And a lot of people in Britain hated him, especially conservatives, because they did not want the empire to be diminished by the loss of India. And Lord Lothian was one of the people primarily responsible for that. Good guy in that regard, but he had a problem. He believed in appeasement. He wanted to appease Adolf Hitler. He was one of those people. He went to Germany. He said, Hitler's a reasonable man. We should trust this guy. He hung out with Goering and Goebbels. He invited the German foreign minister, the Nazi foreign minister, von Ribbentrop, to his country estate, Blickling Hall. So he had a dark side. But when the war started, he was 100% pro-Britain. We got to defeat the Germans. He changed his song. We're at war. We got to defeat Hitler. So he went to war against Hitler. What did he do? He went to America to become the ambassador, Great Britain, the United States, and tried through the whole war to bring the United States into the battle, bring them into the battle. He spent the whole war trying to bring them into the war. Well, he didn't last the whole war because he'd been a Catholic. He'd become disillusioned with Catholicism. So he became a Christian Scientist. Then in 1940, he had a kidney problem and he wouldn't let them operate. And so at 58, he died because he was a Christian Scientist. They read his will, and it turned out that he had left his house, Blickling Hall, to the National Trust. He was a single man. He didn't have a wife. He didn't have kids. Draw your own conclusions. But there was nobody to take the house. Nobody. So he left it to the state, to the National Trust. He set an example of what was possible. And also probably whoever inherited the house from him wouldn't have the money to keep it. So they'd have to like live in it and become part of a museum display. They didn't want that. And he was the man who really solidified what the National Trust is today. This resource for selling houses. Now, of course, they don't buy as many houses as you used to. I'll tell you why, because it's very expensive to take a house. Now, if you give a house to the country of Great Britain, they say you also have to give an endowment. It's like an endowment. We don't have any money. Well, you have to give something else that makes money, like a farm or like some shipping or a coal mine. It's ridiculous, but that's the only way the National Trust can keep stuff going, is if you also give an endowment. You know, the best thing about David, I realized from reading his books and getting to know him better and better, was his wife, Sheila. Sheila was the best kind of English person. You know what the best kind of English person is? One that's here in the United States. They're wonderful here. They're the best people here. And Sheila was that. She had that great accent and she was so loving. John, thank you so much for coming over. It was wonderful to hang out with them, right? They had this big house. It was U-shaped around this garden. And they would have lunch in the garden with the bees buzzing and all the flowers. And she was a wonderful hostess. And you know what she loved most of all? She loved to see David and me argue. She loved to see us argue. We would talk about culture, ballet, opera, symphony. And I would always say, oh, David, you like the most boring stuff. He said, boring, boring. And she'd go, oh, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. She just loved watching people argue. So I want you to, I'm going to be Sheila. I want you two to argue about something. So why don't you say that Barry Lyndon is a great movie? And you say it's terrible and get meaner and meaner to each other, okay? So build on that, and I'll be Sheila. So this is us having lunch, okay? So go ahead with an argument about Barry Lyndon.
I mean, hands down. You should pay. I'd pay like $1 million to watch Barry Lyndon. Like, this is like, I would sell my house. I would sell my wife. I would sell everything to watch this movie. Like, it's the best.
We'd be on the street. You wouldn't be able to see anything.
Wonderful, delicious, treacle, blissful. Oh, you two are wonderful. Yes, yes, yes. Wonderful improv. Yay! And that was it. That was it. Yeah, give him a fist. Yes. A safe fist, a post fist. That was it. That was a meal. David would, he had all these fuddy-duddy tastes. He was like, oh, I love Jean-Luc Godard. And I would say, Jean-Luc Godard, that's so boring. Or I love Hiroshima Mon Amour. I said, that's the most boring movie of all time. And she loved it. And here's the thing, though. They always gave me lunch. So I felt like I had to give them a gift. I always brought Sheila like one of those movie books, like a biography of Cary Grant or a trivia book or a movie catalog. And she thought I was giving her the best gift ever. One day she just warmed my heart because I took my husband, Michael, for his big birthday dinner. I took him to Chez Panisse, that great restaurant in Berkeley, right? It was a big birthday blowout. And we walked in, and there was David and Sheila at a table downstairs with their two friends. And Sheila stood up and she said, John, one of my favorite people. And she gave me a big hug. That just warmed my heart. Well, Sheila got sick. She was very funny even when she was ill. She wore black. Every time I went over, she didn't have a lot of energy, but she was dressed all in black. She said, oh, John, give me a hug. It's so wonderful to see you. And then she was in the hospital. And then she died. David told me something so touching. He told me that just before she died, she was in so much pain that she said, I hate the pain more than I love David. And that was the moment when she let it go, when she let herself die. Well, David's life completely changed. It was amazing. He became a completely different person. I didn't expect this at all. He was lonely and I just couldn't spend much time with him. I was busy, but he had these two friends, gay guys. They were from Texas, Sam and Sam. They're both named Sam. They were a couple. One Sam was quite a bit older, and the other Sam was quite a bit younger. And I believe in May, December relationships. I don't think they're problems, but this was so obviously a sugar daddy and a kid looking for a sponsor. And I just thought it was so cynical. Well, they moved to Berkeley, and now David was hanging out with them all the time. And they were so vicious. They said the nastiest things. And they tried to pit people against each other. They'd say one thing to me and one thing to David, and then we'd start arguing about some stupid thing that they'd stirred up. And then David started getting really vicious too. He was incredibly judgmental and critical. It was driving me crazy. He used to come to my plays and say just sort of the nastiest things. It wasn't like feedback like he used to always give me. It was just sort of like quipping. I thought he's just turned into like an evil bitch, like these two guys from Texas. I was so annoyed. Finally, he came and saw a play I did about the war in Afghanistan, right? This was 10 years ago I did this play, and right, it like just ended, right? We just pulled out. It was a play about these two gay guys who were in the military, and they end up serving in Afghanistan. Well, it was a big war play. So it had two kinds of scenes because it was a gay war play. There were scenes in discos and scenes in the battlefield, right? So there was like all this disco music, right? And explosions. Okay, give me some explosions. Good, good, good. Now give me some disco music. Like, good, good, good. Come on, Bill, give me some disco. What do you mean you don't know? Give me some disco. Sing Stand Alive, Stand Alive.
Staying alive.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't know that's disco. Okay, so those were, so this, okay, so the show was sound reliant, right? So the final performance, and everybody showed up. You know how it is in the theater? Everybody says they're going to come and then they don't. They don't show up until closing night. Suddenly the house is like packed. People can't get in because everybody's finally coming to see the show. Okay. So in that audience was David, had come to see the show finally, and also this playwright, this famous playwright who'd been nominated for a Pulitzer Prize. She made me so nervous. I was terrified that she was in the audience, right? Okay. So the show started and the sound didn't work. A play about gay guys in battle, disco and explosions. The sound didn't work, and we spent half an hour trying to get the sound to work. It wouldn't work. So I went out and I said to the audience, "The sound's not working," and they kind of laughed. And I said, "So I'm just going to shout the sound cues from off stage so you know what's going on." And they're like, "Okay, right." So I go backstage, and then these two boys come on stage and they're dancing, and I shout from off stage, "Loud disco music." The audience laughed. I thought, okay, great, cool, they're on my side, right? And then I was backstage during the battle scene making explosion sounds with the stage manager, so make explosion sounds with me. Machine guns. Okay, so hard to take seriously. It's like a drama, but the audience appreciate what we're trying to do, right? Okay, so at intermission, I thought things were going pretty well. David left. He left the show at intermission. I thought, wow, that's really showing your support. We got through the show. We got into Act Two. Everything went fine. It was great. I went out into the lobby at intermission, after the show, and there was the playwright. And she said, John, that was great. Hey, don't worry about that sound. That stuff always happens. I've had a bunch of performances where the sound didn't work, or the set didn't work, or the lights didn't come on, or an actor didn't show up. It was great. You got through it. I had a good time. I was like, well, she understood. What was David's problem? So I stomped backstage. I was pissed. And the assistant director came up to me and he handed me a package. He said, here, David wanted you to have this. And I took it. I didn't want anything from him. And I threw it in my dressing room. I was furious. I got changed. I grabbed his present. I went home. I threw it in the closet and I didn't look at it. I wasn't interested in anything from him. I didn't speak to him. He sent me a couple of emails. I didn't respond to them. He called me up at the theater. He started to leave a message. I started to listen to it. It was like, "Hi, this is David. I want to make sure John got the package. There was something in." I turned it off. I didn't want to hear it. A couple of years passed. I hadn't spoken to him. I was doing a show called The Habit of Art. I was playing Benjamin Britten, the great British composer. Now, Britten composed atonal music. So give me some atonal music. Just ugly. Just make ugly sounds. Yes. Yeah, good. That's atonal music. Good. Very good, gentlemen. So I was up there as Benjamin Britten. I was talking to W.H. Auden, and we had this long conversation. And then somebody else on stage had a monologue. And we were all supposed to be listening to this person have the monologue, but I did something totally amateur, totally unprofessional. I looked out over the audience. I wanted to see who was in the house tonight. It's like, that's something you do in high school, right? I was looking at the audience, and the back row, I saw there was somebody sitting in a wheelchair. It was David. He'd actually come and seen the show. When it was over, I got changed really quick, and I ran out onto the sidewalk, and there was David in his wheelchair, waiting for a van to come up, pick him up, take him back to Kensington in the East Bay. I said, "Hey, David, how's it going? It's great to see you." And he said, "John, I really enjoyed myself. Thank you. That was great." I said, "Thanks, David. How you doing?" He said, "Not so good. Everything is like, I'm in and out of the hospital. I don't feel good." I said, "David." And I took his hand and I held it tight. And he squeezed it back. And we just stood there on the sidewalk in front of the Eureka Theater, holding each other's hands for a while. But then the van arrived, and I put him on the van. As it pulled away, we waved to each other. That's the last time I saw him. A month later, he died. I was so grateful that he'd done that, and that we worked through everything just in a tiny conversation, holding each other's hand. After he died, I went home and I opened up the closet and I took out that package that he had left for me. And I opened it up, and in it was a novel that he had written called The Big One. It was like a proof, like a editor's proof that he wanted me to see. And I couldn't read it because I think I was a character in it. And I felt so bad that I hadn't read it when he was alive. But I was leafing through it and something fell out of it on the floor. And I picked it up. It was a 5-year-old check to Theater Rhinoceros for $750. And when he'd written it, we had really needed the money. Now it was an old check. I still haven't read that book. I still have the check. Just goes to show you when you're pig-headed. Well, I'm still glad he came that time. It was great to see him again, to think about Sheila and everything. I did learn to run, though. Yeah, I still became an athlete. In spite of myself, I became an athlete. You know what my motivation was? Tourism. I love to go traveling with my husband, Michael. And when we go traveling, we rush around everywhere because I'm such a cheap tourist. I want to see everything in the micro amount of time that we're away, right? So we're always like running. And one Christmas, we went to London. And I wanted to see everything in London. And it was freezing cold and rain. Give me some mist. Hell, there's a little pump bottle under the bike. Spray me with it. Yeah, I need some authenticity. Yeah, spray me. Oh, oh yes. Oh my God, I feel like I'm running through London. Oh my God. What is it's like turpentine. What are you spraying on me? That's horrifying. Well, give it to me anyway. I love the smell. It's like a scent. Oh, yes, yes, armpits. They need some turpentine. Yes, yes. Oh my God. What did I put in that bottle? Thank you. Yay! So I was running around London trying to get to every museum, the British Museum, the Victorian Albert Museum, the National Gallery. I was so excited. It was great. And then I started going to the houses that had been preserved by the government, by the National Trust. The Soane House, which had all these great paintings in it. But the paintings were on these movable panels. And when you went there, you had to wait for the attendant. He was like a butler to change the panel. He had like white gloves, right? And he was very proper. And you had to wait because he only changed the panels every 1 minute. And he had this really disdainful look on his face. I'm like, why is this guy so uptight? But here's the thing. You know about the British class system? Upper class, middle class, lower class. It's very important in Britain. Class system. You know what the lowest class of all is? Americans. We are below low. We are off the chart. And so we get treated like animals when we're there. And it was freezing. The paintings must have been so cold. Why did they heat the place? Next, we went to the Wallace House, this incredible mansion full of old paintings that the government had taken over. And there we saw the Laughing Cavalier, this great painting by Franz Hals, except it should have been the Freezing Cavalier. It was so cold. I don't even know that there were walls on this building. They should have just had it outside. It was awful. And then we went to the Cortot Institute in Somerset House, and we saw the incredibly famous Manet painting at the bar of the Folies Bergère. Incredible. And this museum had heat. It had steam heat. It was amazing. I didn't think anybody in London had steam heat. The thing was, is the radiators were spitting water all over this painting. It had like precipitation going down it. It's like they didn't seem to care about any of their legacy. It was so badly managed. Next, we went to Apsley House because I wanted to see, this is a childhood book of mine, the Battle of Waterloo, this huge battle scene, the climax of the Battle of Waterloo with the charge of the French cavalry. I couldn't find it anywhere in the museum. My favorite painting in the world. It was nowhere in the museum, right? I went up to where all the paintings were, it wasn't there. Then I went down to the gift shop. In the gift shop, they had the painting. It was above the cash register. It wasn't even hung straight. It was sort of at an angle, right next to a bunch of scarves and tchotchkes and pencils. I felt like I could have bought this thing for like £2 if I had the money. It was ridiculous. The British didn't seem to care about their legacy. Everything was cold or wet. We saw a lot of theater too. Theater was the opposite in London at the time. It was all huge productions, socialism, right? Get as many people on stage as possible. But they're all like tragedies. Incredible. We went to some Midsummer Night's Dream, Shakespeare's great comedy. It was performed like a tragedy. Like everybody was so desperate and unhappy. It was not fun. It was not fun at all. It was a Midsummer Night's nightmare. It was incredible. Then we went to see Phantom of the Opera. The music isn't that good. They got two good songs. There were 50 people on stage, but I was like, this isn't that great. The best thing we saw though was Carmen Jones, this all African American production of Carmen, the opera. It was incredible, but it was in this really slummy neighborhood at the Old Vic. It was really hard to get to. It felt kind of dangerous. And then the other thing we saw was Dame Judi Dench in this play, a two-character play, and there were only 40 people in the audience. It was in this micro theater about the size of this room. I was as close to Dame Judy as I am to you. Say something in English like Dame Judy.
How are you this afternoon?
Yes, that was it. I feel like I'm back at that play. I was as close. I could have like slapped her ass if I wanted to. She was so close. It was weird. So socialism, except when you want to have a movie star, and then you just pay a lot of money so 40 people can see it. It was so strange. You know what was going on in Britain at the time? It was the transition from that penny pinching government of Margaret Thatcher into the bogus Labour Party of Tony Blair. It was a very strange time when it looked like they were going to lose their patrimony because they didn't have the money to support it. It was very strange. But we did see some friends of ours. And here's what I was saying about the British in America. We had two friends from UC Berkeley, Dominic and Malcolm. And in Berkeley, they were always like, oh, yes, let's get stoned, let's get high, let's go out and dance. Yes, let's have some fun. But we saw them in London and they'd suddenly turned into English people again. They were like, oh, no, no, that's quite incorrect. No, that is fallacious. That is erroneous. I can't agree with you on that. You're so provincial, typical of an American. They were like snobs. This friend of mine who's English, she lives in Berkeley, she explained it to me. She said that something happens to the English. Something happens to the English when they get back to England. This majesty suddenly grows on their backs and they become very grand. She said none of us like it. Whenever we get back to the Bay Area, we're always like, wow, I have to shake all that off. It's a very interesting phenomenon with them. We saw another show called Kiss of the Spider Woman, the musical. Oh boy, this thing was cheap as anything. It didn't have that big a cast, and the set was really cheap, but it was super campy and silly, right? And I figured out, why is this thing so cheap and everything else is so expensive, like Phantom of the Opera? And it's because it was an American musical. You know, Americans always trying to save a buck. So it was this really campy musical about this movie star. Cheetah Rivera played the lead, right? And at the beginning, she was in this huge spider's web singing Kiss of the Spider Woman. It was so weird. But you know what? It wasn't any fun. And here's the thing about camp, it's got to be fun. If something's campy, it should be fun. There should be joy in it. You know what camp is? Camp is finding something that everybody else has said is bad and discovering what's joyous in it, right? Like some old TV show, right? That everybody said was bad. And now it's just fun. It's campy. You know what my camp test is? Do you like Robert Goulet? Yeah. You know Robert Goulet? Yes, he's wonderful. He's this big, handsome guy with a big chest, right? And he's got this beautiful baritone voice. If ever I would leave you, it wouldn't be in springtime. Seeing you in spring, I'm bewitched by you so. Oh no, not in springtime. Summer, winter, or fall. No, never. He's amazing. But for his whole career, people thought he was schlocky. Will Ferrell made a whole career making fun of him on Saturday Night Live, right? But he's great. He's the best. I think he's a camp god because he's completely discarded. But if you watch him on YouTube now, he's just this big, handsome guy with a bellowing voice. Up until the day he died, he never lost his voice. Incredible. And that's what camp is when it's successful. It's just fun. No matter what you think of the guy. And he always had this little wink in his eye, like, yeah, I know I'm a ham. I know I'm a show off. I know I'm beautiful. Yeah, that's okay. And that's camp too, admitting it, showing that you know that you know. The National Trust houses are like that. They're so pompous. They're so full of themselves. They can't help but be campy. Like they're these huge palaces, right? But they're freezing, right? Or these majestic houses, but they're kind of like falling apart. That's campy. I'm sorry, it just is. It's very campy. And we've got them here in the United States. Hearst Castle, that's super campy. If you ever go to Hearst Castle, it's like all these great elements, but they don't really fit together. It's kind of tacky the way they're all sort of put together, Spanish Baroque and Renaissance, and everything's kind of tacky. But the people who work there are reverential, right? The tour guides are like, Mr. Hearst had impeccable taste. You notice how these people almost always have like near English accents, right? These tour guides. He had impeccable taste. He brought everything from Europe and created this majestic place, Hearst Castle. It's like not that great. It's kind of like a tacky American house, right? It's like a dream house. And he's like, and he was a distinguished businessman. Really? He's kind of a failed businessman. So I think it's pretty campy up there. Fortunately, we went back just before COVID and we had a new tour guide and she was great, right? She took us on the art tour and she was a retired kindergarten teacher, right? That's campy to begin with, right? People who are like kindergarten teachers, they're just camp personified. But she was great. She treated us like 5-year-olds. She was like, welcome. Welcome. Are you here to see some great art? I bet you are. You're going to have fun today. Now, what do you want to see? Paintings or sculpture? What do you want to see? The pool? Come with me. She was great. She was so much fun. And she wasn't reverent about the Hearsts, right? The Hearsts are just campy, right? She wasn't like, you might see a Hearst today. Please don't talk to them. Yeah, it's like, why would we treat that the Hearst? The Hearst, it's like Patty Hearst got kidnapped and they didn't get her back. It was a mess. They're a failed family, but we're supposed to be like in awe, right? Like you might see a Hearst. It's like, what's the big deal? They're just people are so broke they had to sell their house, the house they still live in. But she wasn't like that at all. This woman wasn't like that at all. She was like, you know, Randolph Hearst had no money at the end. That's why he had to sell the house. And his girlfriend, Marion Davies, she was an alcoholic. And they used to try to hide the booze from her, but she always found it. Come right this way. I mean, she had no reverence whatsoever. She just thought it was all kind of silly, campy. She was the perfect tour guide for these people. Insouciance. There are two great plays about the National Trust by two of my favorite playwrights ever. Peter Shaffer, who wrote Equus, he wrote a play called Lettuce and Lovage, right? Now, Lettuce was this woman played by Maggie Smith, and she was a tour guide at a National Trust house, okay? So she would be up there giving her tour, and she just made shit up. You know, she just thought this house was boring. So she just made up a bunch of stuff. Queen Elizabeth had apparently visited this house once, and she'd say, and Queen Elizabeth fell down these stairs, almost breaking her neck. Right this way to see the place where Charles I almost had his head chopped off. It was just nonsense. Very funny play. But the best play about the National Trust is People by Alan Bennett. And it's all about this old woman named Dorothy, and she's been living in this mansion for her entire life. And now the place is falling down around her. It's like that movie Grey Gardens, right? She's like this woman trapped in this huge house, and she doesn't have any money. So it's like literally collapsing around her. Now, her sister wants to give the house to the National Trust. And she's like, she doesn't want that because then she'll be like sitting in her house with people walking by and looking at her. She'll just be a display in her house. So what does she do? To save her house, she rents it out to a porno film company to shoot scenes, right? So they're suddenly shooting porno scenes, and this isn't a play. They're shooting these porno scenes in her house, and they give her a role in the movie. She doesn't play a, she doesn't do any of the sex. She's like a ghost of sex past. That's what she is. Well, I feel kind of guilty about this story because it reminds me of something that I did. See, Theater Rhinoceros used to be down on 16th Street, right? Do you remember that? You remember that? Yeah. And it was going broke. I mean, we were having a real hard time. So I said, we need to rent this thing to anybody. We need to make money. That's what I said to the staff. And there was this guy who was like acting in a play, and I knew that he made movies with a successful movie company. So I said, if you ever want to use one of our spaces, go ahead. And he said, do you know what kind of movies we make? I said, no, it's fine. We just want to rent the spaces. He said, okay. We'd like to rent the shop. We'd really like to rent the shop. Now, the shop in a theater is where they have all the drills and the saws. It's where they build stuff, right? All the tools. So they rented the shop for a week. And the guy I worked with said, do you know what's going on down there? I said, no, they're shooting a movie. He said, do you know what kind of movie? I said, no. I said, they're shooting a gay porno down there. I said, really? He said, yeah. I mean, they love all those screws and saws and drills. I'm like, they're using those in sex scenes? He said, no, they're not using them, but they think it's really hot to be like, oh, come over here by the saw. Yeah, saw me, baby, saw me. Like, drill me, come on and drill me. Yeah, drill me. And there's like a saw in the background. They thought that was really hot. I was like, really? Wow. Here's the problem though. Upstairs, I was renting the theater to a children's theater troupe. So there were 30 kids up there, right, putting on musicals for other kids from other schools to come see them. So upstairs, I have children doing musicals. Downstairs, gay porno. I mean, I could have ended up in jail. This is what money does to you. This is why people end up in jail, right? Because I had porno downstairs and little children upstairs. It's like, I don't know how I got out of that one. That's why we got out of that theater, because it was making me do bad things. It was like a house. It just makes people unhappy. Okay, so to wrap up, sports. I had another great sports day, right? I decided I was going to play sports like everybody else. I was going to camp the best athletes. I was just going to pretend that I was like one of them. And I noticed the only way that they succeed in soccer was they were incredibly aggressive. They were just really tough on the field, right? So come back, enemy soccer player. I want you to come at me dribbling the ball. And this is what I did one day. I decided I was going to be, okay, right? They didn't score a goal that day. Not at all. Thank you. You were great. Yay! And I walked off the field and I heard somebody say behind me, God, John was on fire today. I think they were trying to build me up, make me feel good about it. But I was like, that was easy. I just camped one of the aggressive players. Camp satire, gay satire. I don't need to do that. So I quit soccer. I'd prove myself one day. I didn't have to prove myself again. So here's something very camp. Gay men don't believe in houses so much. They believe in homes. They believe in families, but they camp real families. You see, gay men have had so many difficulties with their families that they don't really look to their biological families to be a proper household for them. They form their own families, right? So like Michael and I, we're a family. We mean everything to each other. We don't own a house. We just have an apartment, but it's a wonderful home. And that's what gay men do. They just camp the aesthetic they grew up with and turn it into something that means something to them. And another way that I feel strong as a gay man is whenever I travel, because we don't like to travel to just gay places. Like we don't like to go to Palm Springs or the Russian River, like yeah, right, Mickey, yeah. We like to go to like any place, you know. But what I need to see in those places are like gay people. Otherwise, I don't feel like I fit in. So it's weird. Like, I don't want to just be around gay people all the time, but I have to feel like there are other gay people in these other places, right? So, like, we went to Yosemite, and it was like really disappointing because we went all the way to the top of Yosemite Falls, right? So we're like, victorious, we made it up here. But there were no gay people up there. None. I was like, God, wow, no gay people at Yosemite. Right? Yeah. I was like, where are they? Where are the gay people? Where'd they go? So we went back to the campsite, to our tent, and we're sitting in front of our tent. I'm kind of like, there gotta be gay people here. And then all of a sudden, walking between the tents, all right, no talking tonight, quiet. I want everybody quiet in the tent. We're going up Half Dome tomorrow and we need to get our sleep. Hello, yes, oh, who are you two? Yes, look at you two. You're so cute. Where are you from? San Francisco? Oh, your roommate? Your husband? Oh, it's so nice to meet you. Just when I gave up, Sebastian and Roberto showed up. I don't know who these guys were, but they were gay as anything. And suddenly the whole campsite was gay, 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 gay. The next day we climbed up Half Dome, and at the top, there were two more gay guys, younger ones. And they were so cute because they were so shy. They didn't want anybody to know they were gay. So they're like very discreetly like holding each other's hands, like so nobody could see. Well, I saw. I was like, good. Gay guys at the top of Half Dome. I love it. That's so great. The best gay guy spotting I ever made was in Moscow. I was like, oh God, I'm not gonna see any gay people here. So we went to the ballet one night, and there were these two incredibly natty guys sitting next to each other. I mean, like perfectly dressed, perfect haircuts, everything. And I thought, they must be a couple. They must be gay, because two straight guys wouldn't look that good, right? No. And a straight guy who did look that good must have a girlfriend or a wife. Well, there was no girlfriend or wife present. And they were just sitting there very properly watching this ballet. And they were whispering to each other. Dmitri, it's a wonderful ballet. Yes, Ivan, I agree. I love you, Dmitri. I love you too, Ivan. I was sure that's what they were. So there's hope for Russia, right? Even in Russia, if you go to the ballet, of course, you're going to find the nattiest guys are gay guys, a couple. Well, I'll tell you one thing I love about the National Trust. It saves houses that nobody wants. And I'm a big tourist. Anytime I go out everywhere, I have to see everything. I just like to see stuff. I like take it off the list. The National Trust saves homes. It gives them love that nobody else was willing to give them. And I also like the name of it, National Trust, right? Trust the nation. And they should. They do great things. I was listening to a podcast this week. It was all about LGBTQ people in the National Trust through history. And they'd unearthed all these gay people in the National Trust. I thought that was so valuable this year, right? So, a great respect to the National Trust, to Brits in the Bay Area. They're the best Brits going. To all the changes up at Hearst Castle. It's become a very, very campy place. And to sports. I really do admire kids who thrive in sports in high school. It's not easy. It killed me. But if you're just aggressive and mean and please the guy on the 10-foot ladder, Dutch Holland's father, you'll do fine. Thank you so much for joining me tonight, my studio audience, and to all my friends out there who joined us tonight for National Trust. I'll be back next week with my final presentation here in Spark Arts. So check out our website, sassymouth.blogspot.com for next week's show. You can join us online. I only have an invited audience, right? So don't come down here. Check us out online. But I was so pleased to be oversold tonight down here at Spark Arts. Theater is back and the houses are packed. This is more people than I ever expected. Let's hear for the audience. Yay! Let's hear for the camera. Yay! And good night. Now I have to turn everything off. You guys were great. Thank you. Bye, audience. Bye, people online. Bye, bye.